Class is now in session. I'm Professor Hockey, and today we'll be discussing the game between the Sharks and the Blues, in which the Sharks lost 4-0, their second time being shut out this season, 4-0, and just in general. The Blues scoring for them Pietrangelo, O'Reilly, Schwartz, as well as Alexander Steen. There wasn't much positive to take away from this Sharks game. The first period started off in favor of the St. Louis Blues. The Sharks did bring it back a bit, but not much to get anything past the goaltender Chad Johnson. And then in the second period, and then in the third period, there were shots from the Sharks, but none that you could really qualify as dangerous. It was mostly just, you see, maybe 30-ish shots by the end of the game for the Sharks, but it didn't really seem as though that they were particularly dangerous. If some of the better ones win in, maybe this game finishes 4-1, maybe this game finishes 4-2, but really the Sharks didn't deserve much with the effort that they put forward tonight. A couple of positives, however, for the Sharks. I'll start off with Aaron Dell. Similar to the game against the Dallas Stars, although Jones got a bit more goal support, Aaron Dell held down the fort rather well, made a lot of high danger saves against the St. Louis Blues. Only the Steen goal I think that he probably could have had. I don't think he played that particularly well, but otherwise the other three goals didn't have much of a chance on at all. And he also came up with a bunch of massive saves, a couple on players like Thomas, had some saves on O'Reilly, on other players on the St. Louis Blues, and so Dell was good enough to win this game for the Sharks. You could say, well, your goalie has to make the big saves, but really the Sharks gave up so many opportunities that it's just impossible to blame Aaron Dell for anything, really. And so the Sharks need to play better in front of their goaltenders, because now this is the 9th game in a row in which the Sharks have given up at least 3, tonight being 4 goals. They also gave up 4 against the Dallas Stars, and this is now becoming a major issue. Another positive, it isn't much of a positive, but I will outline that the best line for the Sharks tonight was, in my opinion, Pavelski, Thornton, and Sorensen. A lot of people saying, oh, separate Pavelski and Thornton. They're the 2 slowest guys. They shouldn't be on the same line. And obviously Thornton on that third line was very good against the Minnesota Wild. But I actually thought the 2 of them with Sorensen was actually pretty strong this game. As strong as the Sharks could have possibly been with their abysmal effort. But otherwise, Kane, Donskoy, and Suomela were okay. The fourth line was a dumpster fire. They had that horrible shift that ended up or a horrible couple of shifts, I guess, because they took the icing that led to the Schwartz goal. Otherwise, they were not good at all either. The first line of LeBanc, Meyer, and Couture had a couple of chances, but you'd like to see better from them. Hopefully Hurdle's back next game. So it really was the Thornton, Pavelski, Sorensen line that was probably the best for the Sharks, but again, not saying much. The third and final positive I'll outline was Tim Heed's this game. I'm not really a fan of Tim Heed. I didn't like his play last season, and he was coming into this one. He's playing with Brent Burns, always a tough defensive partner to play with. This was his first game of the season. He's coming in on the back-to-back. The Sharks probably weren't going to play that well, although this was definitely still a surprise, the effort they put through. And Heed was actually pretty solid. He had the big giveaway on the power play that led to a chance the other way, but this was already later on in the game when you could say that it was put away at that point. But otherwise, he didn't get that many minutes, but was solid in the minutes that he did get. So, going into the next game, I wouldn't be surprised if Heed actually gets another chance in the lineup. But now on to the more negative side of things, and I'll start off with the defensive system. So the Sharks, as I said, have let in at least 3 goals in each of the past 9 games that they have played, which is an insane number at this point. And I would have actually been happier if I could point to Jones and Dell and say, well, the goaltending just hasn't been good, and that's why the Sharks are giving up at least 3 goals per game. And once they return to the mean, then the Sharks should be able to pick up more wins. I'd be happy saying that, and it's rare you find someone who says they'd be happy if their goaltenders weren't playing well. But that would just be an easy fix, because you wouldn't really have to do much besides wait it out. You play the waiting game. But this seems like a core defensive issue for the Sharks. In the first couple of games, I was thinking, Erik Karlsson's making a few misplays, Brent Burns is making a few misplays, the Sharks are getting unlucky. But now when you come to 9 games in a row, it starts to look like a bit of a pattern. The Sharks just seem to be getting lost all over the ice. You know, the goal against Pietrangelo, this was a 4-on-4. All 4 San Jose Sharks were basically at or below the goal line. This left someone completely alone at the point, and Pietrangelo completely alone in the slot. Pietrangelo gets the puck, has time to boil a cup of tea, drink that, and then finally take his shot before Vander Kane can get to him. Vlasic decides that instead of actually trying to pressure Pietrangelo, just sort of stands there and attempts to block a shot that Pietrangelo has 6 years to try and, you know, draw up the perfect shot to take, which he does in the end. The O'Reilly one, Couture and Braun get mixed up. Nobody covers O'Reilly. The Schwartz one, the fourth line gets victimized on this icing. And so there were just so many defensive mistakes from the San Jose Sharks, and not even just in this game, in the past game, in the previous 9 games, as I said. And it's beginning to look like a team-wide issue, right? Sometimes you just see the Sharks get completely lost in their defensive zone. You know, occasionally they're able to clear it up, but you look at some of the other teams that the Sharks have played against. I mean, the Blues had a pretty solid defensive game, keeping most of the chances to the perimeter. Meanwhile, the Sharks are giving up dozens of high-danger scoring opportunities per game during this streak so far, even in Sharks wins that you were saying, oh, this is a nice win, right? The win against the Philadelphia Flyers, you could say that the Sharks gave up too many high danger opportunities. The win against the Minnesota Wild, you could make the same argument as well. And so right now it does seem like a fundamental issue with the San Jose Sharks defensive system, and it's no longer just Karlsson, it's no longer just Burns, it's a team-wide thing. And that brings me into the next point, which is about Peter DeBoer. Now, a lot of people seem to be giving him a lot of flack at the moment for that he needs to be fired and everything like that because he's not doing anything right. I don't think that's fair to him. You know, the lines, yes, they have been juggled, but Hertl has been injured at least for the past couple of games. They were juggled prior, and so you can criticize him for that, as I did. But DeBoer right now trying to find something that does work without Tomas Hertl. And, you know, the offense is being criticized a lot, obviously, because the Sharks didn't score tonight, but the offense has been actually quite good in this season so far. I think they're top 5 or something in the league, at least they were entering tonight. And it's really been the main reason why the Sharks in the past 9 games, it hasn't been more of a red flag for them, because even though they've been letting up 3 goals per game in those past 9, the Sharks actually have a winning record at that point because they've managed to score even more than those 3, right? They have the 4-3 win against the Wild, the 4-3 overtime win against the Flyers, the 4-3 overtime win against the Ducks, the 5-4 win against the Nashville Predators. So the Sharks have been managing to get ahead of their defensive mistakes, but you can't expect that to remain consistent. And this was, you know, this game against the Blues, the game earlier on against the Blue Jackets have shown that that's a thing that the Sharks have to work on, because the offense won't always be there, but it's the defense that you need to have always there. And right now it's the Sharks who are just giving up too many goals. And so if there was a criticism you have to levy towards, it is this defensive system. Is DeBoer actually on the hot seat at this point? My reaction from this game and the past game is, yeah, I think he actually is at this point in a dangerous position. Normally in any other season for the San Jose Sharks, I would say that, you know, give DeBoer some time. But this is a very win-now scenario. You know, Pavelski's on the last year of his contract. Who knows if he'll be back with the Sharks? Joe Thornton is on the last year. Who knows if he'll even be playing in the NHL next season? The Sharks made a massive trade, giving up multiple assets to pick up, you know, one of the best defensemen in the NHL, Erik Karlsson, on 1 year left on his deal. So who knows if he'll be back with the San Jose Sharks. And so this is an all-in year for the Sharks to actually try and win the Stanley Cup. And with the way that their defense is going right now, the way that they're playing at the moment defensively, this is a team that, you know, they'll probably make the playoffs still just because they are just good enough on paper. But this is a team that's looking to check out within the first couple of rounds. And that would just be a massive disappointment, because at that point, you probably lose Karlsson. You have wasted all of those assets. You don't have a first this year. You don't have a first next year either, I don't believe. And this would be a massive failure for the San Jose Sharks. So the only reason I can see DeBoer being on the hot seat is because this is such a win-now mode. And when you have Joel Quenneville sort of waiting in the wings, having been fired from the Blackhawks, a coach that has won 3 Stanley Cups just this decade, you know, you're DeBoer and you're sitting there, and you're definitely feeling the pressure when your team just isn't performing up to par. But I guess, you know, it was the second of a back-to-back. Maybe that's an excuse you can give to the San Jose Sharks. But they'll look to have to regroup as they play another game coming up on Sunday, 3 games in 4 nights, and they'll definitely look to have a much better performance than they did tonight. Class dismissed.